All right. Hello, everybody. Happy June. All right. As we're getting people coming in, I'll go ahead and just kick us off a little bit. So if you're a speaker today, you can go ahead and raise your hand, and I'll get you on the stage. Okay. Well, yeah. Luke, did you want to kick us off today?
That sounds great. Yeah. First, I just want to say hi to everyone. It's great to be here on another governance call. And I just wanted to thank everyone for being part of the Moonwell community and for your strong support over the years, for voting in governance and being active in Discord and in our forums. And just wanted to, kind of talk a little bit about some of the exciting announcements you might have seen yesterday regarding the Coinbase Smart Wallet. We have this vision in our community of this world where on-chain finance and governance is powered by Web3. And we all have this shared mission, I think, of bringing the best and easiest to use on-chain finance tools to the world, wherever you are, regardless of your ability level. And so this Coinbase Smart Wallet was a really amazing launch partnership. We're a day one launch partner with Coinbase. And it really means a lot that now we finally have this powerful tool that lets people use Moonwell in a very easy to use way, where now we no longer have to worry about, buying ETH for gas, and we can, sponsor transactions for everyone using the Moonwell app. That's all made possible by this partnership we have with Coinbase, with the Coinbase developer platform, with the Coinbase wallet team, and being a day one launch partner for the Smart Wallet was a really high priority for us on the Lunar Lab side as an engineering contributor. And I know many contributors like SolarApe and others have also been helping to build, the nice front end experience you see today. So I just wanted to thank everyone for all your contributions and all the hard work you've been doing over the last several months. I want to thank Gauntlet on the risk management side. And I want to thank, Warden on the incentive optimization side and the risk management as well. Solidity Labs, Elliot and his team for really knocking it out of the park on the smart contract side. And then just all the hard work all of you do every day and helping to share the Moonwell app with your friends and with the rest of the world. If you haven't tried the Smart Wallet, I'd encourage you to try it out. Now you can finally use the Moonwell app for free. You don't need to buy any ETH to pay for gas. So that's a big boost. And also you can use Moonwell across all your devices now in a really secure way, whether it's an Android device or an iPhone. And we'd love to hear your feedback on ways we can improve the app and make the experience even better. So just thank you to everyone that's part of the community, and continue to just give us your feedback, tell us what you want to see. And there's a lot of exciting things happening. Also want to thank the team from Block Analitica and B Protocol for being here today and talking about this new opportunity to potentially launch MetaMorpho vaults and Morpho markets on Moonwell. This is going to be a really awesome new DeFi primitive on Base that will allow us to have isolated markets, and I think it's going to be a huge unlock for the Moonwell community and also for the Morpho Blue team as well, the Morpho community, and also just for Base, because there's going to be all this on-chain liquidity that's going to help other on-chain apps succeed. So that's all I wanted to say. I wanted to keep this short and sweet, but I'll turn it back over to Alex and would love to hear your feedback on ways we can improve the app. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Luke. A quick note on MIP M30 that went live last night. If you have voting power from the safety module, I think it'll show you as having 0 voting power, but your vote will still count. So please go ahead and vote anyway on that. And Luke, you can correct me if I'm wrong with that, but if not,
that's right. It will work.
Okay, thank you. All right, and we'll get over to the agenda for today. I have a little bit of an announcement to get the ball rolling here. We have another Galaxy campaign that's in the works, which you probably remember from April and going into May, we ran the Base Voter campaign, where basically the goal was to incentivize users to upgrade their well to vote using the native token on Base. Pretty successful overall. We had a great voter turnout, a lot of eligible addresses as well. So essentially what we're doing is we're taking that smaller campaign and expanding it to a full-scale monthly recurring campaign with the same reward amount. So it'll be $2,000 every month for 20 winners of the raffle, people that mint the NFT. So yeah, there's going to be more details shortly on exactly like the exact actions you need to take in order to mint. It's basically going to be three mandatory actions rather than just voting on chain. So yeah, we'll get more details out. That announcement should be coming on Monday. So just a little bit of a pre announcement from my end. But yeah, that's mostly it for me. Turning to the rest of the call today. So we're once again joined by Sai, our favorite Gauntlet representative. He'll be talking about market updates from the past month. And then we also, like Luke mentioned, we have Block Analytica and B Protocol to discuss the new MetaMorpho vaults proposal. Yeah, I think before we get to that, I think we also have an announcement from Coolhorsegirl. If you want to take it away, I'll let you say your piece.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. I just wanted to bring up the reward speed proposals that were just put up on the governance forum. Platform. That's MIP R20 and MIP M31. They're up just as a few hours ago. The reward speed proposals, if we need a reminder, are submitted every 4 weeks with the goal of rebalancing liquidity incentives and maintaining healthy levels of those rewards on Moonbeam and Moonriver, and then they're not required on base because Warden serves as the incentives admin there. So that's those two proposals to go vote on now. Then one more thing, I'm also planning to put up a forum post to gather community feedback and sentiment about a potential optimism deployment. We've gotten word that there will be big incentives on optimism and grants coming up in the next few weeks, incentivizing products to deploy on optimism. And since optimism is base aligned and also serves as like a governance hub for base and the superchain as a whole, another lending protocol was recently hacked on optimism as well, so there's sort of a void that Moonwell could fill in that ecosystem. Then as for landscape, Aave is dominant on optimism as a lending protocol, but it's kind of a lazy cookie cutter deployment without a safety module. So I'm confident we could be the top lending protocol on optimism if our community is interested in deploying there. So yeah, you'll see a forum post soon, but feel free to shout out any feedback in the Discord too.
All right, great, thank you. So it looks like we'll have Sai on next from Gauntlet, but if anybody else is having issues looking at seeing my screen presented, let me know. Let me check the chat really quick. I think it's showing up on my end. You guys can let me know if you see it. Okay. All right, let me go ahead and get you up here, Sai.
Hey, hi. Sorry.
No, you're good. I was just gonna welcome you on. If you want to start, we can just start with the let me see the most recent recommendations that was posted. So the giant the base Moonbeam Moonriver proposals. If you want to go over that.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, happy Thursday, everyone. And as Luke mentioned, super excited for all the developments happening across Moonwell. For today, I'll just walk through some of the monthly recommendations we made for base Moonbeam and Moonriver ecosystems. As always, I like to start from Moonriver because that's like the easy chunk, and we can go on to the meat of the recommendations later on. So for the Moonriver, the only recommendation we made was regarding XDKSM. We made some IR curve adjustments where we lowered the borrow at kink by from 0.2 to 0.1. So this basically is a measure we've taken since we identified some bad debt on the protocol, which the Moonriver ecosystem, like Moonwell or Moonriver, has more than sufficient reserves to cover. But in the meantime, we don't want the bad debt to accrue more interest. So we decided to lower it for the time being. That should be just Moonriver. Coming back to Moonbeam, we've done quite a few, we've recommended quite a few changes to a lot of parameters across a lot of assets on Moonbeam, starting with a decrease in borrow caps across XEUSDC, USDT, DOT, and Frax. And this is primarily because we see the existing utilization trending downward, and it kind of makes sense for example, for XE dot and BTC wormhole. The utilization is not really at the level where these current borrow caps are warranted, so we recommended a decrease there. However, for say stablecoins like USDC, USDT, and Frax, the current caps are kind of edging closer to more than 40% of the circulating supply on chain. So we want to mitigate some concentration risk to the protocol. So we're trying to slowly taper the borrow cap for XUSDC from say 560K to 400K. Similarly for USDT, we recommended a decrease from 800K to 400K as well. For Frax, we recommended from 5.25 million to 2 million. Basically, we're trying to reduce concentration risk on the protocol, and borrow cap is one of the levers we can use to do that. Apart from that, we also recommended increase in reserve factors for Glimmer. So the idea behind this was we are trying to standardize reserve factors across the protocol with stablecoins maintaining there's a factor of 30% and non-stable assets at 35%. Most of these assets have positions where a lot of users are driven by short-term incentive farming, which is, I guess, all right. But at the same time, you want to make sure that while these positions are farming on these across these assets, the protocol in general can kind of bolster the reserves in parallel. And not just that, it kind of de-risks the protocol a little bit since we are increasing the reserves across these assets. Apart from that, some IR curve changes as well. For XCUSDC, we kind of want to reduce the super high utilization that we're having on the protocol. So we recommended a decrease in kink from 0.75 to 0.65. At the same time, we try to increase the multiplier from 0.11 to 0.14. The same applies for USDT as well. Again, this is to like reduce the high utilization we have and try to get it to levels that are more suitable and kind of have a better appetite for risk here, I guess, if that's a way to put it. For Frax, however, still we're trying to spruce up this market a little bit after once we have the bad debt kind of cleared on the protocol. So we've decided to further reduce the multiplier, so basically reduce the borrowing APR at kink, and we're going to monitor how the Frax market is going to how it behaves or how it improves, and make further IR curve changes if needed. For base, I think we've taken pretty risk-on measures here, considering the overall growth of the chain and the demand for borrowing. On base, we've kind of increased wrap ETH supply cap from 50K to 60K. For wrap stake ETH, we increased the supply cap from 5,000 to 6,300. And similarly, we increased the bar cap for wrap stake ETH from 1,750 to 2,400. This is primarily driven by supply cap utilizations kind of being over 75% for sustained periods. So we think this cap increases would kind of hopefully meet that demand. We also suggested reducing supply cap for USDPC. We've seen a lot of outflows in terms of positions and just like TBL leaving Moonwell, but this is more like a chain-wide behavior or like pattern where a lot of USDBC positions are kind of migrating to USDC. So in that view of that, we recommend decreasing the supply and demand caps just to cap the risk, and at the same time kind of be in line if you ever want to like create the market or just be prepared for any future developments. Apart from that, some IR curve changes for wrapped ETH, USDC, and Arrow. It's kind of surprising that even though we've seen like really high demand for these assets, for ETH and USDC, the utilization has kind of continued to remain below the kink, and that kind of suggests that maybe the current borrow APRs are not reflective of the true perceived market rates. So in this regard, we decided to reduce the APRs at kink, try to kind of get it lower to what the true market rates would be. So for ETH, we lowered the borrow at kink from 2.55%, which is where it is right now, to 1.6%. And for USDC, we kind of recommended to reduce the borrow APR at kink by 50 pips, which is so like 6% to 5.5. This also kind of is in line with what the DSR is at this moment. I think it's been reached a high of 15% in the past few weeks and kind of went down, and currently hovering around close to 8 to 9%. So kind of trying to be in line with what the true market rates would be. So we kind of made this recommendation. For Arrow, however, there's like a super high demand to supply and borrow this asset, and the utilization has been really way above the kink. I think it's been hovering at around 70-ish%, where the kink is at like 45. So really strong demand. And in lieu to get the utilization closer to kink, we've kind of decided to increase these APRs a little more higher. It was at about 3%, which is kind of what we recommend when we're initially listing the assets. And now we kind of want to double that APR to about 6.5%. So hopefully this will bring the utilization closer to the kink and kind of increase the capital efficiency on this market. Yeah, so I think that should be most of the recommendations, basically all the recommendations that we have recommended for these chains. I'm also happy to take any questions.
Yeah, any questions, you can drop them in the chat or raise your hand. Sai, was there anything else from the weekly market update that was posted, I think 3 days ago? It wasn't covered just now in your recommendations?
I think just that directionally, we're just seeing great increase in balances across base. Utilization's being pretty, for the most part, it's hovering at levels that we deem suitable or like acceptable. For Moonbeam, I think that's been kind of trending downwards. Borrow balances have been decreasing. Some supply balance increase for USDT, but again, I think this is like mostly users who are looping and kind of leveraging up. But overall, I think directionally at a very high level, I think Moonbeam and Moonriver are kind of having some outflows in positions here and there, but on base, I think it's been bolstering up really high with wheat supplies kind of trending at all-time highs.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Sai. Yeah, and if anyone has any questions, like I said, you can go ahead and drop them in the chat. And if that's it on your end, I'll go ahead and invite Monetsupply. If you want to raise your hands, I'll get you queued up as speaker. All right, and then as you're doing that, this is also hot off the press. It looks like the voting power is actually accurately reflected for MIP M30. So don't worry about it showing 0, like I mentioned in the intro. But yeah, go ahead and throw it over to Monetsupply if you want to discuss the MetaMorpho Vault's proposal.
Hi, everybody. You able to hear me all right?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'm Monetsupply, representing Block Analitica. We're a service provider. You may know us from working with MakerDAO, where we've been working over there since 2018. And then we've worked with a few other projects over time in different capacities. One more recent sort of project we've been working with quite a lot, though, is Morpho. We're really excited about Morpho's new Morpho Blue protocol and the different features and sort of like advantages it has over existing lending infrastructure. Yeah, we, along with our partners at B Protocol, have put up a proposal recently to partner with you guys at Moonwell and with Morpho to launch some new vault products, basically allowing people to borrow or lend really efficiently using the Morpho Blue infrastructure. So yeah, I can just kind of go through like some of the proposal details and what makes Morpho Blue and the MetaMorpho Vault infrastructure we're proposing to use potentially a really good fit to help Moonwell grow and capture a whole lot of activity on base. So yeah, just kind of going into how Morpho works to get a little bit of a baseline. It essentially works as like an isolated lending market. So each lending pool is going to be fully separated from each other. There will be one collateral asset and then one borrowable asset per pool. And that brings some advantages for risk management. There's not risk of, one pool having some insolvency and that cascading into other pools. It really isolates the risk completely. And then it also has some other advantages where you can safely lend against a wider variety of assets, more long tail assets if you want to. You can charge more risky collateral assets a higher rate than less risky ones, which is, in my opinion, a pretty big advantage over the sort of dominant, what I call an omni-pool lending market, where every asset is borrowable by every other asset. So you can have some sort of like price discrimination factor there, which helps you really earn enough yield to compensate for any increase in risk you're taking on some of these collaterals. And the entire Morpho Blue protocol is governance minimized and immutable. So it's really just a base layer financial infrastructure that anyone can build on. And you don't need to rely on another protocol. Having sound governance, the protocol will just kind of work how it works indefinitely, which is a huge plus for an integrator like what we're proposing with Moonwell. And isolated markets historically, they've had a bit of like a UX friction because it's been on the end user to move their funds between pools, between lending pools, to take advantage of whatever they think is the best risk-adjusted return at that time. And for most people, it's just simply too much work to be like actively monitoring where they're lending their funds. They want to just put it into a market like Moonwell and know that it's being managed efficiently and with risk in mind for them. So that's where the other part of the Morpho protocol, MetaMorpho vaults, come in. Basically, it's a vault structure where you can actively reallocate funds between the different Morpho Blue pools to optimize your return and your risk profile and keep everything diversified so you're not putting all of your eggs in one basket, while also giving users that ideal UX they're looking for, where they don't need to actively monitor their positions every day, and they just know that they're going to be getting the best possible risk return with the help of a protocol like Moonwell and some professional risk managers. And there's a really cool role-based access control system involved in Morpho Vaults. So we're proposing to be essentially like the allocator and the curator, which are two of the roles where basically we'll be empowered to move funds between pools to access the best risk return at the time and kind of meet borrowers where there's demand. And then the curator role is proposing to onboard new collateral assets, proposing to make changes to the supply caps for various pools. So those are kind of like the risk management aspects of the vault. And then there's a guardian role, which has the ability to veto any proposals that we as the allocator or the curator would be making. So it's basically like a check and balance on our power as the vault curator. If we propose something that is too risky of a collateral or something else that doesn't align with Moonwell's strategy, that guardian rule will be able to veto it before it comes into effect. Our proposal, we were recommending to have that set as the Moonwell Security Council. So they'll be able to kind of quickly, I guess, just kind of double check our work in a sense, make sure that everything is looking good, and if there is ever a problem, they can stop any of those changes before they happen. And then there's an owner role, which basically assigns all the other roles. So they could change the curator or the allocator from us to another manager in the future, potentially. If the DAO wants to do that, they can change the guardian role to someone else other than the Moonwell Security Council. And we're recommending that owner role would sit with the Moonwell DAOs. Token holders will be empowered to make that kind of high level decision of who is managing these other rules. So yeah, it's those access controls. They have a lot of redundancy to them. It gives us as a risk provider a lot of flexibility to really manage stuff on a day-to-day basis without getting too bogged down in too much process, and being able to be really agile, but then still having the security and the ultimate sort of control over the vaults sitting with the DAO. So it's still maintaining that adequate decentralization to be a really reliable DeFi product. So yeah, that all being said, we've got a forum post on the Moonwell forum, just kind of like going to all of this in a little more details. At launch, we're looking to have a ETH denominated vault. So basically people can lend or borrow ETH. Most of the collaterals we're recommending are liquid staking tokens like Coinbase ETH, Wrap Staked ETH, Rocket Pool ETH, and then a USDC vault, which will have those liquid staking tokens as well as ETH be the collateral to borrow against. And, over time, potentially branching out into other collateral assets as we see demand develop and serving whatever borrowers Moonwell wants to develop a relationship with. So yeah, check out the forum post. We're going to be putting up a snapshot vote to just kind of gauge initial support from the Moonwell DAO very soon. I think after the call, I'm hoping to put that up today. And yeah, would definitely love to hear any questions, any feedback, either here on the call or in the forum post.
All right, great. Yeah, thank you for that summary, Monetsupply. Yeah, highly encourage everyone to go check out the forum post and then be on the lookout for the snapshot and then the on-chain vote following the snapshot. So yeah, as we're wrapping up here, this is the time for anyone to raise your hand if you have any questions for the speakers. I'll get you on. And also as a quick note, our next call, which usually falls on the first Thursday of every month, this one happens to be the 4th of July. So we're going to move it just back by just one day. So it'll be Wednesday, I believe, July 3rd, and we'll have it at the same time. Yeah, I guess that'll be it then for this call. Thank you to all of our speakers. I hope everyone has a good month, and we'll catch up in July. Cheers, guys.